All right, for our third lesson in this quadratics unit, we are going to start by factoring. Factoring is something that you should have seen in Algebra 1 or whatever classes you took before this. The reason we factor, and we'll get into this more with our next lesson, is it's our first step to actually solving quadratics. We've graphed them so far, but now we actually have to find an x value. The first thing you always have to look for when you're going to factor is a greatest common factor. So I'm looking for a GCF, see if every term has a number that goes into each of them. So if you look at this first example here, I have 4x plus 2. Well, I know that 2 goes into both 4x and 2. So I'm going to take the number that goes into both of them and put it out front. And then I'm going to divide that into both of these terms. So 4x divided by 2 is 2x, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I take the number that I can take out that they have in common, put it in front, and then write what's left inside parentheses. So if we look over at the second problem, 5x squared plus 10x minus 25. 5x squared, 10x, and 25 all have a 5 in common. So if I pull a 5 out, inside parentheses I'm going to be left with 1x squared, 2x, and then a negative 5. Because again, if I were to multiply this 5 back into those parentheses, if I were to distribute it, I would end up with 5x squared plus 10x minus 25. So we're kind of like undistributing. On this third problem, 7x minus 1. The biggest number that 7 and 1 both have in common is just 1. Since 1 is not going to change my answer at all, I can pretty much just say there's no GCF. There's no way I can simplify that problem and pull anything out of it that will change it. So now we're going to get to actually factoring. We always factor in standard form. So we have this ax squared plus bx plus c equation. And this is what we will always use. So like I said, the first step is always look for a greatest common factor. Once we do that, we're going to factor using what we call the star method. And that's what this little asterisk over on the right side is. So you're always going to label A, B, and C like we did with graphing, and then we're going to use this asterisk and fill it in. So at the very top, I'm always going to put A times C, so multiply those two numbers together and write it in the top. The bottom is always going to be your B value, just B. And then the two sides at the very top are going to be your A values. So that's everything that's given to us. If you notice, we have these two blanks down here. What we're going to do is once we fill in the star, we need to find two numbers that will multiply to the top but add to the bottom number. And once we find those two numbers, that's what we put in these blanks on the sides. From there, we can write our factors and we can do more with that. But this is the gist of what we're doing today. So we're going to go ahead and just do an example. So I have 3x squared minus 15x plus 18. So we have to look again. The GCF is our first step. I know that 3, 15, and 18, well, they all have 3 in common. So I'm going to pull out a 3, and I'll be left with x squared minus 5x plus 6. Now once I take that GCF out, that changes my A, B, and C values. So A is now 1. B is negative 5, and C is 6. So this is where I'm going to take the star and fill in all of my information. So remember, A times C goes on top, so that's 1 times 6, which is just 6. B goes on the bottom, which is negative 5, and then A goes on the tops. So I need to think of two numbers that could multiply to positive 6, yet add to negative 5. And I know that that's going to be negative 2 and negative 3. So the hardest part is going to be coming up with those two numbers on the sides. I'm circling the sides now because I'm also going to look to see if what I'm circling has a GCF. 1 and 2, the only number that goes in both of them is 1. So again, I can't take anything out. 1 and negative 3, there's nothing to take out there either. What these sides are, these sides now become my factors. So factor means multiply, so we have two sets of parentheses. And the way we write this is I'm going to have my top number, that 1 is going to go in front of the x, and then I'm going to put in that negative 2. So I have 1x minus 2. On the other side, I also have a 1 on the very top, so that goes first. And I have a negative 3 on bottom, so I'm going to have 1x minus 3. So this is our answer. We could also just write it as x minus 2 and x minus 3. Remember that 1 isn't needed. So this is all we're doing. Once we get to this step, we have our answer. However, one thing I did forget that you need to have down here is we pulled out a GCF of 3 at the beginning, so that does need to be in our answer at the end. So if you pull out a GCF, that needs to be a part of our answer at the bottom of the problem. So we'll go through example 2 real quick again together, and then you'll have 2 try your own problems. So here I have 1x squared plus 1x minus 2. There's no GCF in this problem, so I don't have to do anything with that. Since there's no GCF, I can start labeling A, B, and C. And then we can start with that star. So again, I'm going to put A times C at the top, which is just negative 2. B goes at the bottom, and then A goes on the sides. So I need to find 2 numbers that'll multiply to negative 2, but add to positive 1. Once I think of everything that multiplies to negative 2, I realize that 2 and negative 1 will both multiply to negative 2, but they add to a positive 1. So again, I look on the sides. 1 and 2, there's no GCF there, so I'm done. 1 and negative 1, same thing. A big hint here is if any of your numbers is ever 1, there's never going to be a GCF. So I write my 2 sets of parentheses. The top number goes with the x, and the bottom number is what's added on behind. For the second side, since my top number is 1, I have 1x. Then my bottom number is a negative 1, so I'm going to subtract 1. I look back at the top. I did not have to take out a GCF, so my final answer is 1x plus 2 and 1x minus 1. So these are your 2 try on your own problems. So remember to always take out your GCF first, and then you need to fill in your star, and then write your factors. Good luck.